Hello once again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We're broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, as well as the American Guns and Glory Network, YouTube, and numerous other media. If your local internet provider doesn't carry Fired Up, ask him to do that and we'll take care of it. Have him call us. A new show is posted every Thursday around 5 p.m. Pacific time. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your part of Nevada. If you have questions or comments, send me an email to bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder, which is 702-257-1060. If you don't leave contact information, I can't call you back. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms each week in the United States, rarely truthfully or fully covered by mainstream media. I always select a few for each show for my listeners' education. Most are good shootings, some are questionable, some are just plain wrong, but all are educational for those of you that keep a defensive firearm in your home or carry one for self-defense in your vehicle or on the street. Be sure to read our disclaimer at the end of the show for limitations on our comments and limitations on our stories. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law, so the advice given here may not apply in the area where you live. Advice from a local, gun-knowledgeable defense attorney is always recommended. Incidents are as reported, but the names of the individuals involved are deleted. The identification of the cops, the lawyers, and the media are generally used. So, here we go. This first story comes from the Washington Times, December 22nd, 2020, 2 days ago, in Erie, Pennsylvania. A 26-year-old customer began firing shots at a gun range in northwest Pennsylvania. He began firing at another man and was then shot to death by a third man. Troopers in Erie County were called shortly after 2 p.m. Tuesday to the State Gamelands gun range. That's the name of the range, is State Gameland in Green Township. The investigators said their initial investigation indicates that a 26-year-old from Northeast was shooting downrange, but then turned and started firing at a 28-year-old customer who was from Erie. Police said a 67-year-old Erie man allegedly saw what was happening and then shot the 26-year-old multiple times. The 26-year-old died at the scene, and his 28-year-old victim was being treated for multiple gunshot wounds at an Erie hospital. The report on his condition was not available at the time of this report. Police say the older man was in custody. His name and the name of the wounded man weren't released. No charges were immediately announced. I expect this incident will take some time to sort out. Mental illness is an obvious cause. The expression, who in their right mind would do this, certainly seems to fit this incident. Fortunately, other armed citizens took immediate action to end the attack. I expect the anti-gun left will jump on this tragedy pretty quickly as evidence that nobody should have a firearm without mental health screening. You can see this coming. I wonder how many armed Pennsylvanians did not shoot anybody on that day. What do you think? Maybe millions? Story number 2. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram reported December 17, 2020 in Fort Worth, Texas, an armed 67-year-old Weatherford woman stopped a burglary by pulling out her revolver on 2 men who she found in a building on her family's property. This is according to the Weatherford police. Police responded to a burglary in progress call shortly after 8:30 in the morning. When officers arrived, police found the woman detaining the burglary suspect at gunpoint. The woman told officers she arrived home with two other people and saw a vehicle in her driveway that she did not recognize. Police did not release detailed information on how the woman captured the suspects, but they said her friends helped take the men into custody. Weatherford police say the incident occurred on private property, so no license to carry laws would be in effect, and the police report did not state whether the woman had a concealed carry permit. After the arrest, police returned the stolen property to the woman. Weatherford police identified the suspects as a 23-year-old from Haltom City and a 39-year-old from Hazlitt. Those are nearby communities. The men face charges of burglary of a building, according to jail records. The 39-year-old is also being held on drug and firearms charges out of Tarrant County. The two remained in the Weatherford jail on Thursday in lieu of $15,000 bail each. The woman could not be reached for comment as of this report. No injuries were reported in this incident. My comments here are this 67-year-old victim and her friends did everything right, especially not commenting to the media. It appears to be a valid use of a pointed firearm to end a criminal threat. The criminal history of the older burglar indicates how dangerous this incident really was. A brave and heroic lady here. A question for Biden and Harris is what could have happened if these folks were not allowed to possess firearms? Unfortunately, gun owners may find out when the new gun czar Beto O'Rourke takes over. I'm looking forward to that. More on that later in the show. We are going to break now for a word from some of our friends and supporters. I'll be right back. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. And as promised, here I am again. Third story, this comes from WKYT Channel 27 News, reported December 19, 2020 in London, Kentucky. The Laurel County Sheriff's Office reported an attempted robbery was reported at the Bait Bucket store south of London around 7 in the morning. Deputies were told that the 32-year-old would-be robber entered the store saying he wanted money and implying that he had a weapon. An employee fired a gun at the suspect when he allegedly assaulted another employee. The 32-year-old was killed by the employee's gunfire. Pretty straightforward. A third employee was hit in the side by a stray bullet. She was taken at the scene. She was treated at the scene and taken to UK Medical Center in Lexington. The sheriff's office is now investigating the incident. Comments here, the implying he had a weapon usually means he gave an indication, such as a hand in his pocket or holding his hand behind his back as if he's about to draw a firearm. Coupled with the robber's verbal comments that he wanted money, the intended victims are certainly allowed to believe him. That is actually an armed robbery in most American jurisdictions. If you point your finger in your pocket, it's an armed robbery. The downside here was the other employee being hit by a stray bullet. Unless you practice shooting as a full-time occupation, your skill level in real-life gunfights will be generally less than 50%. It is difficult to clear the background with your tunnel vision of the opponent adding to the speed of the fight. Legally, the robber is responsible for her injuries as he provoked the incident. Morally, no excuses. The guy who pointed his gun at her and pulled the trigger is responsible. That is going to be tough to live with. Hopefully she recovers fully. Fourth story. 12 News Now reports December 12, 2020, in Beaumont, Texas, a woman shot her ex-boyfriend who was trying to break into her home on Friday evening. Beaumont police said officers responded to a call about a burglary just after 6 in the evening in the 3200 block of Cartwright Street in the South End neighborhood. The caller told 911 dispatch that her ex-boyfriend was breaking into her home. According to the reporting officer, her name is Haley Moreau. The intended victim said she fired her gun and hit the intruder. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Jefferson County Precinct 1 Justice of the Peace, Ben Collins, Sr., there's a title, said the man had a gunshot wound to the chest. The homeowner fired one shot, which struck the man in the chest. The Justice of the Peace ordered an autopsy. Beaumont police detectives identified the deceased as a local 35-year-old. Detectives interviewed the woman on the evening of December 18th and did not make an arrest. Officer Morrow said the investigation into this case is still ongoing. If you have information about this crime, you could earn a cash reward of up to $1,000 by providing an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers of Southeast Texas. You can call them at 409-833-TIPS, T-I-P-S. So that's 409-833-8477. Comments here are going to be fairly elongated. Domestic violence never stops. Under local law in Texas, this is likely to be a good shooting. The autopsy may provide some clues as to why the ex-boyfriend tried to break in. If the female victim here had applied for a domestic protection order, it would strongly shift the possible litigation in her favor. If you are afraid that it would cause your ex to be even more violent, go to the local police and explain in person what is happening. Or tell a local attorney about your problem. He or she will keep a record also. Call a domestic hotline. Confide in your best girlfriend. There are dozens of solutions here. The idea is to create a record because sooner or later with this type of individual, you will need that record to prove this was an ongoing problem and not a spur-of-the-moment shooting. We're going to stop here again for my favorite commercial, me touting my own latest book, which is available on Kindle. Watch that, buy a book, you'll learn something. I'll be right back. My latest book, Self-Defense with Firearms, Use of Force in Nevada, is now available on Amazon Kindle for $4.95. You can download it now. It contains examples of dozens of shootings and pointing a firearm cases that I personally experienced in my 24 years in law enforcement, or where I testified in court or deposition as a firearm and use of force expert. The book is about the use of firearms in defense of yourself and others in my home state of Nevada. I have appeared as an expert witness in Nevada courts dozens of times, and that experience has shown me the necessity of putting pen to paper once again. Nevada state law as printed can be misleading to those of you who read it, as it is written in legal jargon, what I usually call lawyer speak. These statutes are also bent or even broken by the courts in their everyday decisions that we generally call case law. Those are rulings that say this or that statute does not apply in a particular incident and similar cases. That causes the law you are depending on when you make a decision to use your firearm only partially or not apply at all to your actions. Relevant Nevada statute numbers are included here and there, so readers may look up current wording on the Nevada State website. Teaching firearms in 28 law enforcement academies, including cadets from 26 different Nevada agencies, personally instructing over 30,000 concealed firearm permit students and 20,000 private security officers, I've discovered a lot of commonalities in deadly force incidents. Less than 100 pages, this book offers advice that can save lives and costs of expensive defense lawyers to reduce your losses in the inevitable civil lawsuits that follow these incidents. Get a copy, learn how to avoid, prepare for, and react to life-threatening situations. And there it is. These are real. Get one of these on Kindle, or they can also sell you a hard copy, I understand. That's about the limit of my knowledge on computers anyway, so we'll stop right there. Story number 5. The Battle Creek Enquirer, a journalist named Trace Christensen, reported December 19, 2020 in Abion, Michigan. The Abion Director of Public Safety, Scott Kipp, said officers were first called just after 8 in the morning to an apartment in the 100 block of West Porter Street for a man attempting to kick open the apartment door. When officers arrived, the would-be intruder was gone and the officers left. Within 30 minutes, this 22-year-old, later discovered he was 22 years old, returned, and the public safety director, Kipp, said, the preliminary investigation shows the 22-year-old would-be intruder had a gun but did not fire a shot. That will loom large in a bit. The 24-year-old man in the apartment was also armed and shot the intruder. Unfortunately, he also accidentally shot and injured the woman. The woman inside was taken to a hospital for treatment, and officers are interviewing the suspect in the shooting. Public Safety Director Kipp said he believes the shooting may be self-defense. The investigation is continuing. No arrests have been made, but a report will be sent to the Calhoun County prosecutor for review. Comments here. The armed intruder did not fire, but the man inside the apartment did. If you are threatened by an armed intruder, it is not smart to wait for him to shoot first. My earlier story about another event in Kentucky was somewhat similar. One of the shots fired in self-defense accidentally struck a bystander. Without intent to harm her, that is probably not a legal problem, as the intruder, again, caused the incident to take place. That remains, however, a real-life problem. Marksmanship skills are dramatically lower during the stress of real gunfights. Lots of practice helps, but even modern video simulators cannot duplicate reality. No matter what the attempted stress level in a simulator, the shooter knows deep down inside he is not in danger of being shot. Real-life gunfights are different. There's no way to prepare for it, and when it happens, it happens. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do to make excuses if one of your bullets finds an innocent party. Number 6, the Press Register reports December 18th, 2020 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, local police were called to the 1000 block of Russ Wynn Street just before 2 in the afternoon about a burglary in progress. While en route, the police said their units also learned that the suspect had been shot by the homeowner. When officers arrived at the home, they said they found both the home's occupant and the suspect, who was identified only as male, still on the scene. Police say the suspect in the burglary had been shot 3 times in the middle section of his body. He was transported to the hospital by ambulance. As of this report, there is no additional information as to the suspect's condition. Officers also found what appeared to be evidence of an attempted forced entry into the home at the rear of the residence. Police said there are no charges against the homeowner at this time, but the investigative division is continuing to look into both the burglary and the shooting to determine what charges, if any, will be filed against the shooter and what charges might be filed against the suspect. Police have asked anyone with information about these incidents to call the Clarksdale Police Department. Their number is 662-621-1856. Or you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. All calls remain anonymous, and cash is paid to those providing information that leads to solving a crime. Cool. The comments here, this is going to get complicated. The reports say an attempted forced entry into the home. Without an actual intrusion, the resident should have just called 911 and perhaps use a verbal warning about the cops being on the way or something like that. This could prove problematic for the resident, particularly if he is charged criminally. Mississippi is not known as an anti-self-defense state, but what if any charges will be filed against the shooter and what charges might be filed against the suspect's statement by the investigative division means it is time to get an experienced criminal defense attorney involved. This is going to be a long, drawn-out case. Who fired first is an issue. Here we might have the burglar claiming self-defense, and we might have the resident being charged. If you're involved in something like this, dummy up and get a gun-savvy defense attorney. We're going to break here for a few more words from some of our supporters. I'll be back with the training tip of the week. Don't go away. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man. Don Green, 702-409-8239. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out battlefieldvegas.com. And we are back. The training tip of the week is handgun ready position for concealed carriers. This particular idea came from a blog from ccwsafe.com. CCW Safe is a firearms insurance operation that sells liability policies to gun owners and users. One of the services they provide is an online newsletter to educate their clients in self-defense. Their latest blog deals with a huge issue. That is being able to find your personal firearm by touch when you might need it. You cannot look down at your holster, fanny pack, or purse, as that takes your eyes off the potential threat. The way you get around that is to have physical contact with your firearm before you actually need it. If you find yourself in a possibly dangerous situation, perhaps walking home when you missed your ride, you got off the bus at the wrong stop, or just out walking the dog after dark and you see unknown strangers nearby. The solution is to have physical contact by touch with your firearm. There are two common major ways to accomplish this. The first is what we would call holstered ready. The concealed carrier establishes a dominant hand firing grip on the handgun, but does not remove the handgun from the holster, fanny pack, or purse. This can be done slowly and discreetly by angling your body so as to escape the attention, or done rapidly in order to constitute a lawful defensive display if that becomes situationally appropriate. Advantages to this position are that the muzzle remains oriented in a safe position, the trigger guard is covered, and what is probably the slowest portion of the draw stroke, finding where your gun is, has already been completed. The other method is what we call Covert Ready. The concealed carrier draws the handgun but holds it behind him or her with the muzzle oriented toward the ground. Law enforcement officers are often trained to do this during high-risk traffic stops. If the stop proves benign, the officer returns the gun to its holster and the person stopped was never aware of the officer's action. The same techniques would apply in the civilian world. The idea is to get a grip on your gun so you don't have to avert your vision. One unshakable absolute with each of these ready positions is that the concealed carrier must always keep their finger straight and alongside the slide or the frame above the trigger guard or on the slide itself. Otherwise, any sudden movement by your opponent, even a nearby loud sound, could cause a grasp reflex and result in an unintentional firing. I've seen lots and lots of these over the years, and they never end well. Safety first, finger off, trigger. That's it for today. Check out my recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains several dozen episodes. Please patronize our friends and supporters. They're most having a real hard time of it right now. I'll be back next Thursday on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, the American Guns and Glory Network, and numerous other websites, television, and radio stations. When watching any media, just click on subscribe and new shows will be sent to your phone or computer automatically. My logo merchandise, hats and shirts, and mostly books are available at Battlefield Vegas, just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. If you're ever in Las Vegas, Battlefield is a must-see attraction. You can shoot a minigun or any of hundreds of firearms, even crush a car with an Abrams tank at their associated outdoor facility. Transportation is provided. You can contact them at info@battlefieldvegas.com. Thank you so much for watching Fired Up. Watch our disclaimer after the show ends, and I'll be back next week. Have a great Christmas.